Why do some people walk into a room and seem to change its temperature? Why do certain voices draw you in, while others fade like background noise? And why is it that a few people, with nothing particularly special about how they look, dress or speak, are remembered long after they've left? The secret, though it may seem mysterious, is not luck. It's not even natural charisma. It's communication, not the mechanical kind we're taught in school, but the living, breathing art of making people feel. Every relationship, every opportunity, every quiet moment of trust begins with a single spark, a conversation. Sometimes that spark is a smile, a glance, a word spoken with warmth. Sometimes it's silence, the kind that listens. And yet, in that fragile space between two people, something happens. A bridge forms, invisible but powerful. Think about the last time you met someone who made you feel seen, not just noticed, but understood. Maybe it was a colleague who asked the right question, a stranger who laughed at the right moment, or an old friend who seemed to know what you were feeling without you having to explain. Those moments stay with us, don't they? Because they remind us of what we crave most: connection. But connection, as simple as it sounds, isn't easy anymore. We live in a world where people scroll more than they speak, where attention is scattered like confetti, and where eye contact feels almost intimate. The lost art of conversation is quietly fading, replaced by emojis and replies that never quite reach the heart. And yet, the truth remains timeless. Success in every form, love, friendship, business, influence, belongs to those who know how to reach others. Not through charm, not through manipulation, but through presence. Through a way of speaking and listening that makes others feel valued, safe, and significant. That's what this book is about. It's not a collection of tricks to impress people, though it will teach you how to leave an impression that lasts. It's not a script for every situation, though you'll soon find yourself knowing exactly what to say. It's a journey through the small human gestures that open doors, melt walls, and turn conversations into opportunities. Over the next chapters, we'll explore how tiny changes in the way you move, speak, and listen can transform the way people respond to you. We'll talk about the subtle language of confidence, the kind that doesn't shout, but hums quietly beneath your words. You'll learn how to make a dynamite first impression, how to master both small talk and the deeper kind of talk that builds trust. You'll learn how to sound like an insider, to connect without pretending, to build rapport that feels natural. You'll discover how to make your presence felt, even through a phone call, and how to walk into any room and feel that it belongs to you. But more than techniques, this book is about awakening something that's already inside you, that quiet awareness of others, that empathy we all had as children before the world taught us to rush past it. You'll find stories here, real ones, about people who learned, sometimes painfully, that words can build or break, that listening can be more powerful than speaking, that connection isn't about being interesting, it's about being interested. Each story will whisper something simple but true, that the way you talk to people can change everything. It can change the way you are seen, the way you are remembered, and perhaps most importantly, the way you see yourself. So before we begin, take a moment. Breathe. Think of one person you admire, someone who seems effortlessly magnetic, someone who doesn't try too hard, but always seems to make others feel special. Ask yourself, what do they do differently? Maybe they listen longer. Maybe they look at you as though they have nowhere else to be. Maybe they laugh easily or speak your name like a gift. Whatever it is, it's something you can learn. And when you do, you won't just talk to people. You'll connect with them. You'll turn simple exchanges into memories, small gestures into trust, and words into warmth. Because in the end, that's where all success begins. Not in strategy or in style, but in sincerity. It all begins with a conversation. Chapter 1. The first, hello, making a dynamite. First impression. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you'd known them forever? Even though it was the very first time? It happens rarely, doesn't it? There's that warmth, a kind of invisible electricity that hums beneath the surface, and before you realize it, you're smiling, leaning closer, already trusting them a little more than you meant to. What is that? Why do some people have the gift of instant connection, while others, maybe kinder, smarter, more sincere, seem to disappear into the noise of the crowd? It's not about beauty or brilliance. It's not even about confidence, not in the way most people think of it. The truth is simpler, softer, and infinitely more powerful. It's presence. Presence is what happens when you step into a room and your attention goes outward, not inward. When you stop worrying about how you look or what you'll say, and instead tune into the quiet rhythm of the people around you. You stop performing and you start noticing. That's when people feel you. I once met a man at a conference. Let's call him Daniel. Nothing about him was particularly striking. Plain suit, gentle voice, average height. Yet within moments, everyone seemed drawn to him. The woman at the check-in desk smiled wider when he approached. The waiter lingered when refilling his glass. Even the busiest executives made room for him in conversation. I asked him later, "What's your secret?" He laughed softly, almost surprised by the question. "I just look at people," he said, "really look. Most of the time they're waiting for someone to see them." And that's it, isn't it? The art of first impressions isn't about showing off who you are. It's about letting others feel who they are when they're around you. When someone feels important in your presence, you become unforgettable in theirs. Think back to the last first impression that mattered. Maybe a job interview, a first date, a meeting that could open a door. You probably worried about saying the right thing, about your handshake, your smile, your timing. But if you could replay that moment now, you'd see something deeper. Your energy. Did you radiate calm or anxiety? Were you truly present or trapped in your own self-conscious thoughts? Did you look at the person or through them, waiting for your turn to speak? People don't remember our words, not really. They remember how those words made them feel. Imagine walking into a room not to impress, but to connect. You take a slow breath, lift your eyes, and see the faces around you. Not as a test, but as people with their own stories, insecurities, hopes. You smile, not because you've been told to, but because in that moment you're open. The air shifts slightly. Conversations pause. Someone notices. That's the beginning of every powerful connection, the invisible signal that says, "I'm here with you. Not ahead, not behind, right here." There's a quiet confidence that comes with that kind of awareness. You don't have to force your charm or fill the silence. You just exist fully, and people can sense it. Like sunlight warming their skin after a long shadow. I remember a young woman once told me, "I used to think I was invisible. People would forget me after introductions. I started reading about body language, about posture, but it all felt fake. Then one day I decided to stop focusing on what they thought of me and start focusing on them. I began to see people, and suddenly they started seeing me." That's the paradox of human connection. The less you chase approval, the more you invite it. When you meet someone for the first time, the smallest details matter, not because they're tricks, but because they reveal where your attention lies. The way you hold your body, not stiffly, but open. The way your eyes linger for half a heartbeat longer, saying, "I see you." The way your voice softens when you speak their name. Those are tiny, almost invisible gestures, yet they whisper something powerful. You matter. And that's the real magic. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be remembered. You only need to make others feel lighter when you appear, because that's what the best communicators do. They don't dominate a space. They warm it. Sometimes that warmth begins even before you say a word. Maybe it's your posture as you walk in, the quiet steadiness in your step, the gentle way you scan the room, not for status or opportunity, but for someone who looks like they could use a kind face. You meet their eyes, share a small, genuine smile, a few seconds of humanity, and already something has shifted. People often talk about charisma as if it is a mystery, something you either have or don't. But charisma is simply emotional generosity made visible. It's what happens when your inner attention spills outward and embraces the room. The first impression, then, is not about perfection. It's about emotion. You don't need to say the perfect line. You only need to make someone feel perfectly at ease. Try this the next time you meet someone new. Before you speak, take one breath. Slow down. Let your mind go still and remind yourself that this isn't a performance. It is a meeting between two human beings. When you do, your words will fall into place naturally. Your smile will feel real, and your presence will quietly tell them, "I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to meet you." That's what Daniel did, without even knowing it. That's what every unforgettable person does. They don't need to say much. They just arrive fully and let their calm become contagious. The truth is, people aren't drawn to those who are flawless. They were drawn to those who make them feel comfortable being themselves. So when you think about first impressions, remember this. It's not about dazzling others. It's about dissolving the distance between you. When you enter a room, you have two choices. You can make it about you, how you look, how you sound, how you're perceived, and you'll always be chasing their approval. Or you can make it about them, their comfort, their emotion, their experience, and you'll never have to chase again. Because when someone feels safe around you, they'll never forget you. And that is how every great connection begins, with one genuine, quiet, beautiful hello. Chapter 2. The Music of Small Talk. How to Master the Art of Connection. Have you ever found yourself standing beside someone, a stranger at an event, a colleague at the coffee machine, and felt that awkward stillness settle between you? That tiny pause when both of you search for words, anything to fill the silence, but everything that comes to mind feels too small to matter. Nice weather today. Busy week, huh? Did you catch that game last night? And yet, even as you say it, a quiet voice inside you whispers, this doesn't feel like connection. Small talk gets a bad reputation because it sounds trivial, but in truth, small talk is how we test the waters of trust. It's not about the words, it's about what those words are doing underneath. They're asking, can I feel safe with you? Can we share this space without tension? Will you meet me halfway? When you think of small talk as music, everything changes. You stop trying to be clever and you start listening for rhythm. Every conversation has a tempo, a rise, a fall, a breath. And the people who seem effortlessly social aren't those who talk the most. They're the ones who can feel that rhythm and move with it. I remember once meeting a woman named Claire at a dinner. She wasn't loud or showy, but when she spoke, everyone seemed to lean in. She had this calm curiosity about her. She made small talk feel like storytelling. "How's your week been?" she'd ask, not as filler, but as if the answer truly mattered. And when someone said, "Oh, just busy," she didn't nod and move on. She smiled softly and said, "Busy good or busy exhausting?" It was such a small thing, one added question, but suddenly the conversation deepened. People opened up. They told stories instead of summaries. That's what small talk can do, when it's done with attention. It becomes a doorway. You see, when we meet someone, we don't want to dive straight into vulnerability. We need something lighter first, something that lets both hearts find a comfortable rhythm. That's what small talk is for. It's like tuning an instrument before a song. When you treat it as a warm-up, not a waste, you start to see its quiet beauty. A comment about the weather can become a moment of empathy. A joke about traffic can become a shared sigh of humanity. A compliment about someone's jacket can lead to a story about their travels, their memories, their roots, but only if you listen. Most people hear to reply. The rare few listen to understand. They listen with their eyes, their body, their silence. They don't rush to fill every pause. They let it breathe. And it's in those gentle pauses that people start to relax. Because here is the secret no one tells you. Connection doesn't live in words. It lives in the space between them. I once watched an old man and a teenager talk at a park bench. The boy, nervous, was doing all the talking about school, video games, his friends. The old man said very little, but every time the boy looked up, the man was smiling softly, nodding, eyes bright with attention. And slowly, the boy's words slowed down. He began to share deeper things, his worries, his hopes. When he finished, the old man said just one thing. "You speak like someone who thinks carefully. That's a gift. Don't lose it." That one sentence mattered more than all the boy's chatter combined, because it wasn't about information. It was about feeling heard. That is the hidden purpose of small talk, to help someone feel seen without the weight of expectation, to remind them they're safe in your presence. When you talk with someone, pay attention not just to what they say, but to what lights them up. The flicker in their eyes when they speak of a passion, the softening of their tone when they mention someone they love, the small sigh when they speak of something heavy. These are cues, emotional breadcrumbs that lead you into real conversation. The best communicators follow those breadcrumbs gently. They don't force depth, they invite it. They say, "That sounds important to you," or "You seem to really care about that." And in doing so, they turn small talk into trust talk. If you've ever walked away from a short exchange feeling lighter, that's why. It wasn't what was said, it was how it felt. The energy of small talk isn't in its cleverness. It's in the warmth behind the words. You don't need to be funny or profound or impressive. You just need to be curious. Curiosity is love in disguise. It says, "You matter enough for me to want to know you." And once someone feels that from you, the conversation stops being small. Think of the first few moments of any interaction as an opening melody. You don't have to play the whole song. You just need to strike the right note. Ask something real but light. Listen with your full attention. Find the rhythm in their voice and mirror it gently. People remember that. They may forget the topic, but they'll remember how easy it felt to talk to you. You'll know you've reached that rhythm when silence no longer feels awkward. It feels peaceful, like two instruments resting between verses. And when you can make someone feel that, the quiet comfort of simply being understood, you've mastered the real art of conversation. Because small talk, when done with sincerity, isn't small at all. It's the first step in a dance that can lead to friendship, partnership, love, or even just one bright moment of shared humanity in an ordinary day. The melody starts the same for everyone. A few words, a smile, a question. But the music is how you make them feel while you're there. And that's the music people never forget. Chapter 3. The Language of the Body. What we say without words. Before we speak, we've already said so much. Every tilt of the head, every lift of an eyebrow, every subtle movement of the hands, they whisper stories we may not even realize we were telling. Long before your first word reaches another person's ears, your body has already started the conversation. It's strange, isn't it? How something we rarely think about can hold such power. But it does. Because people don't listen only with their ears. They listen with their eyes, with their instincts, with that quiet radar we all carry deep inside. Think of the last time someone looked at you, really looked. Not the quick glance of politeness, but that slow, grounded gaze that made you feel as if, for a moment, you were the only person in the room. Remember how that felt? Safe, seen, respected. That's the power of presence. The language of the body doesn't shout. It hums softly beneath our words, giving them meaning, weight, and sincerity. When your posture is open, your eyes gentle, your gestures natural, people don't just hear what you're saying, they believe it. But when there's a mismatch, when your smile is forced, your shoulders tight, your eyes darting, even the most beautiful words lose their melody. We've all felt that dissonance before. The manager who praises your work with a stiff grin and crossed arms, the friend who says, "I'm fine," while her fingers twist nervously in her lap, the stranger who compliments you but never meets your eyes. Something inside you knows. You can't explain it, but you feel it. Because the body doesn't lie. And when words and energy disagree, we always trust the energy. I once coached a young professional named Ria. Brilliant woman, full of ideas, but she struggled to make people listen. She told me, "I speak clearly, I prepare, but no one seems to take me seriously." When we met, I noticed it right away. Her words were confident, but her body was apologizing. Her shoulders curved inward, her hands stayed clasped protectively in front of her chest. Even her voice, though articulate, trembled on the edges of each sentence, as if asking for permission. So, I told her something simple. Before you speak, let your body say it first. We worked on posture, breath, stillness, not tricks, not power poses, just presence. I asked her to ground her feet, to feel her breath move through her spine, to lift her chin as if she were meeting the moment rather than hiding from it. A week later, she walked into her next presentation, didn't change a single word, but changed everything else. She stood taller. She paused longer. Her gestures matched her message, and for the first time, her team listened. Because the body speaks truth. And when your body says, "I belong here," the world quietly agrees. What most people call confidence isn't loudness, it's alignment. It's when your words, tone, eyes, and movements all point in the same direction. People can sense it, just as they can sense fear. The great irony is that we spend years learning what to say, but almost no time learning how to be while we say it. We study vocabulary, but not presence. We polish our sentences, but forget our silences. And yet silence, that space between words, is often where trust begins. Imagine speaking to someone who truly listens. They don't rush to reply. They breathe with you. They nod, their expression soft, their head slightly tilted in curiosity. You feel encouraged to keep talking, to share more. That's the body language of empathy. Or think of someone charismatic. They may not say much, but their energy fills the space. Their gestures flow easily. Their smile arrives before their words. You feel pulled toward them, not because they're perfect, but because they're present. Your body tells the truth of your attention. When you're genuinely engaged, your torso faces the person, your eyebrows lift, your pupils widen slightly. When your mind drifts, your body betrays you. Your arms cross, your feet turn away, your phone becomes an anchor. Awareness is everything. When you notice your own body, you regain control of your message. Next time you speak, try this. Before you open your mouth, take a breath and notice your stance. Are your shoulders soft or tense? Are you leaning in or leaning away? Is your heart open or guarded behind folded arms? Then, with intention, relax, unfold. Let your body say, "I'm here." The change will be immediate, not just in how others see you, but in how you feel. You see, the body isn't just communication, it's emotion made visible. When you relax your body, your mind follows. When you open your posture, your confidence flows. When you mirror someone's rhythm subtly, their gestures, their pace, they feel understood at a level deeper than words. It's like dancing, really. Connection is always a duet. One leads, one follows, but both are listening. When your body listens, others feel safe enough to dance too. Even your hands tell stories. Nervous hands fidget or hide. Confident hands rest softly in view, palms open, movements smooth and unhurried. A simple gesture, offering your hand, placing it gently on your heart, or letting it rest on the table, can speak volumes. When your gestures align with your words, sincerity radiates. When they don't, people sense it instantly, even if they can't explain why. I remember once sitting across from a man in a coffee shop. We were strangers, both waiting for meetings, both pretending to be busy. He caught my eye, smiled, and nodded in that small human way. It was nothing really, but in that instant the air softened. The room felt friendlier, a silent exchange of kindness. The simplest body language there is, recognition. That's all communication is, recognition. Your body is always saying, "I see you, I hear you, I respect you," or "I'm distracted, I'm closed, I'm not ready." And people respond accordingly, often without realizing why. So the next time you enter a conversation, remember, your words might start it, but your body will decide how it ends. Walk in with calm shoulders, look with warmth, listen with stillness, speak with movement that flows, not forces. Because the real conversation begins before you speak and continues long after your last word. The way you hold yourself is the first promise you make to the world, and the way you make others feel in your presence, that's the language they'll never forget. Chapter 4. Walking and talking like a VIP, the posture of confidence and grace. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and felt everyone's eyes turn, even before that person said a single word? It's not always the most beautiful person, not the tallest or the loudest, or the one in the most expensive clothes. Sometimes it's someone ordinary until they move. And suddenly, they seem extraordinary. There's something about the way they hold themselves, calm, grounded, assured, as though they've made peace with the space they occupy. They don't rush, they don't shrink, they simply belong. That's the quiet elegance of true confidence. Real confidence doesn't strut. It doesn't need to announce itself. It walks in silence and lets presence do the talking. But here is the truth no one tells you. People aren't born with that kind of presence. They build it, moment by moment, breath by breath, often after years of feeling unseen. I once knew a man named Arjun. He worked in a large company, bright, capable, but always overlooked. "I just don't stand out," he said one day, slumping in his chair. "I try to speak up in meetings, but it feels like no one hears me." When I observed him, I saw the problem instantly. It wasn't his words. It was his energy. He'd enter rooms apologetically, small steps, eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to disappear. His voice would start strong but fade halfway through, like a song losing its courage. So we worked on something deceptively simple. His walk, not his speech, not his confidence, not his strategy, just the way he entered a room. I asked him to slow down, to take up space with intention, to lead with his heart, not his head, to imagine that every step carried quiet certainty, that he deserved to be there, that his very presence added value. The next week, something remarkable happened. He didn't change his presentation. He didn't even speak differently, But when he walked into the room, people looked up, they listened, and when he spoke, no one interrupted. Presence had done what persuasion never could. That's the secret of walking and talking like a VIP. It's not arrogance, it's awareness, not superiority, but serenity. You walk differently when you stop needing permission to be seen. The posture of confidence isn't about standing tall in the physical sense. It is about standing tall in your energy. When you walk into a room and your attention expands outward instead of folding inward, people feel it. They can't always explain it, but they sense something. A calm gravity. And gravity pulls. Watch any leader, any artist, any person whose presence fills a space. They move as though they are in sync with time itself. Their gestures are unhurried. Their head stays level. Their eyes move with curiosity, not caution. They don't fidget because their body is not at war with their thoughts. When they speak, they pause, just long enough to let silence work for them. Silence is a secret currency of authority. People who rush through their words signal insecurity. People who pause, breathe, and let their message land signal power. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You need to sound like someone who believes in their own words. That's the voice of quiet influence. Deep, steady, paced. It's not just the sound that matters, but the intention behind it. Every word carries energy. When you speak from your center, not your throat, not your nerves, but that steady place just below your ribs, people feel it. They may not know why, but they lean in. That's why people with true charisma seem magnetic. It is not that they have something you don't. It is that they are fully at home in themselves. Confidence begins not when you're admired, but when you no longer need to be. To walk and talk like a VIP, you don't have to pretend. You have to remember. Remember that you are already enough, that you don't need to prove anything, only express what's real. Try this the next time you enter a room. Before you step through the door, stop. Take one slow breath. Feel your feet. Feel the ground beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Lift your chin just slightly, not in pride, but in openness. And as you walk, let your eyes soften, scanning the room as though you're greeting an old friend, not facing a test. Because every room you enter isn't a battlefield. It is a stage where your authenticity becomes your grace. And when you speak, let your words carry warmth, not weight. People will feel the difference. They'll hear your calm. They'll trust your composure. That's what talking like a VIP really means. It's not imitation, it's embodiment. The quiet knowing that respect is not demanded, it's invited. I remember once being at a charity gala. The room was filled with well-dressed people, laughter, clinking glasses, rehearsed charm. And then a woman walked in. She wore something simple, elegant, but that wasn't what caught everyone's attention. It was her presence, composed, unhurried, radiant in stillness. She didn't rush to greet people. She didn't overtalk. She moved like someone who trusted her own space. Later, I asked her secret. She smiled and said, "When I walk into a room, I remind myself, no one here is above me, no one is below me. We're just people, all of us trying to connect." That's grace, the balance between confidence and humility. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to dominate to be powerful. And that balance, that's what people remember. So when you think of walking and talking like a VIP, forget the glamour, forget the performance. Think instead of calm, of dignity, of being fully present in your own body. Because real elegance isn't about being noticed, it's about being remembered for how you made the room feel when you were in it. And when you learn to walk like that, to speak like that, with grounded energy, quiet self-trust and genuine warmth, you don't just enter the room, you elevate it. Chapter 5. Sounding like an insider. Speaking the language of belonging. Have you ever walked into a conversation and felt like an outsider? Maybe everyone else seemed to speak a language you didn't quite understand. The rhythm too fast, the jokes too coded, the tone too practiced. You smiled, nodded, tried to keep up, but inside you felt like someone standing outside a warm house, watching laughter through the window. We've all been there, and yet there are people who seem to belong anywhere they go. They blend in without effort, move between groups like water changing shape to fill the space it's poured into. They can talk to CEOs or artists, neighbors or strangers, and somehow they always sound like they belong. What makes them different isn't luck. It has awareness, the quiet art of listening deeply enough to hear the language behind the words. Every crowd has its own rhythm. Every community, every profession, every friendship circle speaks a dialect, not just in vocabulary, but in energy. Some groups speak in facts, others in feelings. Some value humor, others precision. The secret isn't to imitate, it's to tune in. When you listen long enough, you start to feel the current beneath the conversation. You notice what people emphasize, what they avoid, where their pride lives, where their fears hide. You start to understand not just what they say, but why they say it. And when you meet someone at that level, when your rhythm meets theirs, belonging happens effortlessly. I once met a man named Victor at a networking event. He wasn't from a corporate background. In fact, he'd been a musician most of his life, but he'd recently stepped into the business world. He confessed that he felt out of place. "They talk in numbers and acronyms," he said. "I feel like I'm in a foreign country." I told him, "Then learn the music, not the words." A few weeks later I saw him again, transformed. He wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't. He'd simply learned to listen differently. He mirrored the rhythm of business conversations, short sentences, measured tone, confidence held steady like a bass line. But when he spoke, his musician's soul still came through. Vivid metaphors, empathy, flow. People loved him for it, because he didn't try to copy their language. He joined it, then added his own melody. That's what it means to sound like an insider, not to imitate, but to integrate. To meet people where they are, while staying grounded in who you are. Every interaction has two levels, content and connection. Most of us focus on the first, what we're saying, but insiders focus on the second, how it feels to say it. They match energy, they adapt their rhythm, they adjust tone and timing, not to manipulate, but to harmonize. Think of conversation like jazz. The melody might change, but what keeps it alive is listening, timing, and respect. You don't overpower, you don't rush. You flow with the others until everyone feels the same rhythm, and then magic. There's a kind of invisible empathy in people who can do this. They don't need to dominate a conversation. They don't need to prove they belong, because their attention does that for them, and people can feel attention. When you're fully present with someone, you begin to echo their natural cadence without realizing it, their pace, their phrasing, even their pauses. This is not mimicry, it's connection. The brain interprets it as familiarity, and familiarity feels safe. That's why, within minutes, people begin to trust you, to open up, to invite you closer. The key is subtlety. When you mirror someone's energy too obviously, it feels rehearsed. When you do it with awareness, it feels like resonance. There's a story I love about a journalist interviewing a world leader. The journalist said afterward, "I don't remember most of what he said, but I remember how he made me feel, like my words mattered." That's belonging. It's not about hierarchy or status. It's about shared humanity, disguised as dialogue. When you enter any new environment, a meeting, a party, a community, take a moment before you speak. Listen, observe, notice how people interact. Are they playful or precise? Do they interrupt or wait their turn? Do they use stories, data, humor, or empathy to connect? Once you notice the rhythm, let your own voice adjust, just enough to harmonize. You'll find that the walls people usually build around themselves begin to soften, because sounding like an insider isn't a T about being like them, it's about being with them. And when you do it right, something beautiful happens. They start to adapt to you too. Belonging, after all, is not one-sided. It's a dance. One person takes the first step and the other follows. Sometimes the first step is as simple as asking, "How do you see it?" or "That's interesting, tell me more." The most magnetic communicators ask not because they have to, but because they're genuinely curious. Curiosity, again, is the universal language of belonging. It bridges generations, industries, cultures. It reminds people that even if your worlds are different, your hearts are not. I once heard a poet say, "When you listen deeply, even strangers start to sound familiar." That's the essence of connection, not just talking, but tuning. When you master that, you can walk into any room, a boardroom, a cafe, a wedding, a street market, and find common ground within minutes. Because you're not speaking to roles or titles anymore. You're speaking to the human underneath them. And humans, no matter how different they seem, always recognize warmth. So the next time you find yourself feeling out of place, remember this. You don't have to change who you are. You only have to expand who you are, enough to make room for someone else's rhythm inside your own. When you do that, you won't just sound like an insider. You'll become one. Because the true insiders aren't those who talk the loudest or fit in the fastest. They're the ones who make everyone else feel like they belong too. Chapter 6. The Invisible Connection. Building Subliminal Rapport. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant, inexplicable ease, as if your minds were already halfway through a conversation you hadn't yet begun? No awkward pauses, no effort, just flow. You finish each other's sentences, you laugh at the same rhythm, even silence feels comfortable. That, right there, is rapport, invisible, instinctive, powerful. It's the quiet current that runs beneath all great communication. You can't see it, but you can feel it. A vibration that says, "We're in sync." Subliminal rapport isn't manipulation. It's empathy made physical. It's when two nervous systems find each other's frequency and begin to dance, not in words, but in timing, in tone, in shared emotional rhythm. You've probably felt the opposite too. You meet someone and something just feels off. Their smile is fine, their words polite, but your body doesn't relax. You can't quite explain it, but the air feels misaligned. That's what happens when energy clashes. When one person's rhythm moves too fast, too loud, too self-contained for the other to follow. Rapport is about alignment, not agreement. It doesn't mean thinking alike. It means feeling alike for a moment in time. There's a story I often think of about two violinists playing side by side in a crowded station. At first, their notes compete. One races ahead, the other lags behind, but slowly, almost unconsciously, they begin to adjust. One softens, the other slows, and then, without a word, they find it. That perfect, shared tempo. That's rapport. Two instruments tuning until they vibrate in harmony. And when you build it with someone, everything changes. They listen differently. You speak more freely. Walls come down, and the conversation deepens naturally without force. So how does that happen? How do you build this invisible connection? It begins where all true connection begins, in attention. When you focus entirely on another person, not just hearing, but feeling them, your body begins to mirror theirs. It's not conscious mimicry, it's the language of empathy. You lean in when they lean in. You lower your voice when theirs softens. You breathe at the same pace. You match their emotional tempo. And suddenly, the air between you changes. They start to relax. They trust you, not because you've convinced them, but because you've joined them. It's a deeply human instinct. Our brains are wired to recognize similarity as safety. When someone reflects our rhythm, our mind whispers, "They're like me. I can rest." But there's an art to it, a subtle one. Rapport built from authenticity lasts. Rapport built from technique cracks under pressure, because people can always feel the difference between someone who's mirroring them and someone who is understanding them. True rapport is born not from imitation, but from resonance. It's like when two people laugh together, not at the same joke, but at the same truth. Or when you say, "I know exactly what you mean," and they believe you, not because the words are perfect, but because the emotion behind them is real. There's a moment I'll never forget. A man sat across from me once, a client, nervous, guarded, polite. Everything about him was contained. I asked questions, but his answers were short, careful. I could sense he wasn't ready. So I stopped asking. I let silence fill the space, softened my posture, looked down for a moment, then back up slowly. I said quietly, "You don't have to impress me. Just tell me what's real." He exhaled. A long, slow breath, the kind that carries months of weight. And then, finally, he began to speak. That's what rapport does. It opens the door from the inside. It tells someone, "You're safe here." The mechanics of rapport are simple, but their magic lies in intention. When your goal shifts from "I want to be liked" to "I want to understand," everything softens. Your tone drops naturally. Your eyes relax. Your face mirrors empathy. Your timing becomes gentle, patient, and people feel it deep in their nervous systems. In fact, studies in psychology show that when two people connect deeply, their heart rates synchronize, their breathing patterns match. Even tiny muscle movements, the tilt of a head, the flicker of a smile, fall into rhythm. It's not strategy, it's biology. Our bodies know before our words do when trust is present. When you speak to someone with true attention, not as a task, but as a moment of humanity, they feel seen. And when people feel seen, they open, they trust, they remember. There's no faster way to build connection. Sometimes rapport looks like silence. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes it's just that slight lean forward that says, "I'm with you." So the next time you find yourself in conversation, don't try to impress. Try to align. Breathe slower if they're calm. Ease your pace if they're reserved. Match their tone if they're thoughtful. Let your energy settle into theirs until you both find that shared middle ground. And once you do, once you feel that click, you'll know. The words will flow easier. The pauses will feel natural. The world outside the moment will disappear for a while. That's the invisible connection at work. Quiet, human, timeless. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't end when the conversation does. People will walk away from you and still feel lighter, calmer, understood. They might not know why, but they'll think of you as someone they can trust. Because real rapport lingers, not as memory, but as feeling. And that feeling, that subtle, invisible warmth, that's what turns a simple interaction into a lasting relationship. Chapter 7. Feeding the Ego and Knowing When to Stop. Have you ever noticed how some people glow when you compliment them and others grow suspicious? A small gesture of praise can make someone feel seen, valued, even inspired. Or, if handled clumsily, it can feel manipulative, hollow, a little too polished to be real. It's a fine line, isn't it, between affirmation and flattery, between feeding someone's spirit and feeding their ego. But understanding that line, learning to walk it with grace, is one of the quietest and most powerful skills you can develop. Because whether we admit it or not, every person you meet carries a secret hunger, the need to feel significant. You feel it, I feel it, we all do. From the moment we're children, we seek that small nod from the world, a teacher's approval, a parent's smile, a friend's admiration. That need doesn't fade as we grow older. It simply hides behind more sophisticated masks. Ambition, pride, performance. Underneath it all, we're still just hoping to be recognized. When you understand this, communication changes. Conversations stop being exchanges of information and become opportunities to nourish someone as unseen need, to remind them, even for a moment, that they matter. But here's the key: it must be real. Real recognition is quiet, subtle. It doesn't rush to flatter, it pauses to notice. Think of the last time someone acknowledged something genuine about you, something small, perhaps even something you thought no one saw. Maybe they said, "I like how calm you are when things get messy," or "You always make people feel welcome." It wasn't dramatic, but it stayed with you, didn't it? Because it told you, "I see you." That is the essence of feeding someone's ego in the healthiest sense, not inflating it, but reflecting their worth back to them. I once worked with a woman named Elena, a manager struggling to motivate her team. She told me, "I praise them all the time, but it never seems to land." When I sat in on one of her meetings, I saw what was wrong. Her praise was too broad. "You're all doing great. Fantastic job, team." It sounded nice, but it didn't touch anyone individually. Afterward, I asked her, "What's something specific that each of them does well?" She thought for a while. Then her eyes softened. "Oh, Jordan always volunteers for the toughest clients. Maria keeps morale up when things get hard. And Leo, he never complains. He just fixes things quietly." "That's your real praise," I said. "Tell them that." She did, and something changed. The energy in the room lifted. People straightened in their chairs. They smiled, nodded, not because they were flattered, but because they were seen. That's what real recognition does. It calls people back to their best selves. Flattery, on the other hand, does the opposite. It creates distance. Flattery says, "I want something from you." Recognition says, "I value something in you." And people can always feel the difference. There's a story about a man who complimented everyone he met, lavishly, endlessly. But no one took him seriously. Until one day a friend told him, "You praise everyone so much that none of it means anything." The man frowned, thought for a moment, and then began to change. He started observing quietly, really observing, noticing details, habits, effort. And when he finally spoke, his words carried weight. That is how you feed an ego responsibly. You earn the right to say something that matters. Sometimes the most powerful compliment isn't about achievement at all. It's about essence. You make people feel safe. You have a peaceful energy. You always seem to know what matters. Words like these reach deeper than surface praise because they touch identity, not image. But there's another side to this art, knowing when not to feed the ego. There are moments when silence is stronger than approval. When someone demands praise, you can feel the need beneath it, the insecurity, the craving. In those moments, it's not your job to fill the void. It's your job to hold your own center. Because if you give approval too freely, you train people to seek validation instead of growth. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to give respect instead of flattery. To hold eye contact and say, "You already know you did well," and then move on. True confidence doesn't grow from constant praise. It grows from quiet acknowledgement, the kind that doesn't feed dependency, but strength. If you ever want to know when to stop feeding someone's ego, ask yourself, am I giving this because it's true, or because it's easy? If it's easy, pause. If it's true, speak. And when you do speak, speak softly. Real praise doesn't need volume, it needs honesty. The most magnetic people in the world have a way of giving compliments that feel like gifts, simple, sincere, wrapped in attention. They don't flatter to be liked. They recognize to make others feel real. Because here's the paradox. The more you make others feel seen, the more visible you become. People remember those who reflect their best selves back at them, not because of ego, but because of emotion. We live in a world where people are starved for real acknowledgement. Be the one who gives it. But give it like sunlight, gently, naturally, without trying to control where it falls. Feed the spirit, not the ego. Speak truth, not convenience, and always know when enough is enough, because confidence doesn't come from constant validation. It comes from being surrounded by people who see you clearly and trust you enough to tell you the truth. When you become that person, something beautiful happens. Your words stop being decoration and start being nourishment. And in that quiet, human way, you begin to change people, not by flattering their pride, but by reminding them of their worth. Chapter 8. Your voice on the line. Turning the phone into a tool of connection. It's strange, isn't it, how a voice, just a simple human voice, can make us feel less alone. You could be miles apart, separated by cities, screens, oceans of noise. And yet, the moment you hear someone say your name softly on the other end of the line, something in you relaxes. It's as if the distance collapses, and for a moment, presence becomes sound. That's the magic of the human voice. In a world where messages flash and disappear, where conversations are typed and forgotten, your voice still carries something that words on a screen never can: warmth, breath, emotion, humanity. And yet most people forget this. They treat the phone like a task. They speak quickly, mechanically, distractedly, as if they're already halfway out of the conversation before it even begins. But when you learn to speak with intention, when your voice carries calm instead of rush, attention instead of obligation, the phone becomes something powerful, a bridge. There's a rhythm to voice connection. It begins the moment someone answers. You can feel the energy on the other end, tired, hurried, cheerful, guarded. And without even realizing it, your tone adjusts. That's empathy at work. It's your body's way of saying, "I hear you," beyond the words. I once knew a woman named Lena, a customer service executive who had built her career on her voice alone. People adored her. Even those calling with complaints would end the conversation thanking her. When I asked her secret, she smiled and said, "I smile before I speak. Even if they can't see me, they can feel it." And she was right. Emotion travels through tone. A smile softens consonants, lengthens vowels, lowers tension. A frown tightens every sound, making even kindness sound sharp. We forget that when we speak, our emotions echo. Your tone says more than your vocabulary ever could. It tells people if you're listening. It tells them if you care. It tells them if your heart is with them, or just your words. When you on the phone, or any kind of voice-only connection, presence matters more than eloquence. The pause before you respond. The small inhale that shows you're thinking. The softness in your hello. These details, almost invisible, shape the entire conversation. Think of the people whose calls you look forward to. Chances are they make you feel calmer after you hang up. Their voice lingers, not as sound, but as a kind of emotional afterglow. That's presence. That's intentional communication. I once heard a story about a nurse who worked in a hospital ward for elderly patients. Many of them were lonely, rarely visited. Each day she would call their families to give updates, but she didn't rush through the reports. She spoke slowly, gently, with pauses long enough for silence to breathe. And one day, a patient's daughter told her, "I look forward to your calls, not just for the updates, but because your voice feels like hope." Hope. Through a phone line. That's the power of tone. In business, your voice can build trust faster than any email ever could. In relationships, it can heal misunderstandings. Words alone can't. Because when people hear you, they don't just register sound, they sense sincerity. If you want to sound like someone who can be trusted, don't rush, don't fill every silence. Let stillness live in your pauses. Let your breath be heard. When you're fully present, your voice lowers naturally, your words flow with ease, and even a simple phrase like, "I understand," carries real weight. There's something profoundly grounding about a voice that doesn't demand attention, but invites it. If you ever want to hear the difference, record yourself when you're stressed, and again when you're calm. You'll hear it, the tightness, the clipped edges, the shallow breath of tension. Then compare it to the warmth that appears when you're at ease. That warmth isn't performance, it's peace, and peace is contagious. When you speak from calm, others unconsciously slow down to meet you. Their breathing steadies, their tone softens. The conversation becomes smoother, kinder. That's not technique, that's resonance. So when you pick up the phone, take a moment before you speak. Breathe, smile. Picture the person, not just the task. Speak as though your voice is wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Because it is. In that moment, your voice is their atmosphere. You can fill it with stress, or you can fill it with warmth. You can hurry through it, or you can let it hum gently with presence. There's a quiet kind of power in mastering your voice, the power to soothe, to inspire, to connect. It's not about sounding perfect, it's about sounding real. And if you ever doubt that, remember this. A baby doesn't understand words, but it recognizes love in tone. The melody of comfort is older than language itself. So, when you call someone, whether it's business or friendship, whether it's a stranger or someone you love, remember that your voice carries energy. Let it be gentle. Let it be grounded. Let it say what words cannot. Because long after they've forgotten the details of what you said, they'll remember how it felt to hear you say it. That's how you turn a simple phone call into a moment of connection. Not with volume, not with polish, but with presence, the kind that reminds people, even through wires and distance, that they're not alone. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 9? Working a room, how to glide through any crowd with ease. Next. It will take the same warm, narrative tone and teach, through story and flow, how to navigate social spaces gracefully, build instant connections, and make every room feel like home. Chapter 9. Working a room, how to glide through any crowd with ease. There's a moment, right before you enter a crowded room, when you feel your heartbeat quicken. You straighten your clothes, you take a breath, and then the door opens. A wave of noise, laughter, voices, music, lights. People in small clusters, leaning toward one another, talking as if they've known each other forever. And for a split second, you hesitate. Where do you start? Who do you talk to first? How do you walk into a space full of strangers and somehow, by the end of the night, feel like you belong? This is what most people get wrong about social confidence. They think it's about being extroverted, bold, the loudest person in the room. But real confidence is quieter than that. It's not about commanding a room. It's about connecting with it. And connection always begins with energy. The people who glide effortlessly through crowds, the ones who make it look easy, aren't the ones trying to impress. They're the ones who've learned to bring calm with them, because energy is contagious. If you enter a room nervous, people feel the tension before you even say a word. If you enter open, grounded, curious, The room softens to meet you. I once watched a woman named Sarah at a networking event. She wasn't a big personality. She didn't talk loudly or gesture wildly. She just moved with quiet confidence, smiling as she passed, making gentle eye contact, listening more than she spoke. And somehow, by the end of the evening, everyone seemed to know her, not because she sought them out, but because she made people feel seen wherever she went. The secret to working a room isn't about collecting names. It's about leaving warmth behind you. When you walk into any social space, start small. Find one person, anyone, and greet them with full attention. Look them in the eyes, offer your hand or a smile, and say something simple but genuine. "Hi, I'm glad I'm not the only one here early." That's a great tie. It's got character. The food smells too good to ignore, doesn't it? You don't need a clever line, you just need sincerity. People can feel it instantly, that rare kind of presence that says, "I'm here, not just passing through." Once the first conversation begins, don't rush it. Listen. Ask small questions that invite people to open up, not the kind that test knowledge, but the kind that reveal emotion. How did you get into this? What's the most surprising part of your job? Did you know anyone here before coming? Every question like that is a small key, unlocking something human in the other person. When you make someone feel interesting, they associate that feeling with you. And that's the quiet trick of influence, not making yourself memorable, but making others feel memorable in your presence. I once saw a man, a quiet architect named David, turn an awkward networking event into something close to magic. He didn't rush from group to group. He just listened, really listened, his head tilted slightly, nodding, smiling, his body relaxed. When people spoke to him, they didn't feel like they were talking at him. They felt like they were talking with him. And when he left, I overheard someone say, "There's just something about that guy. You feel better after talking to him." That's how you work a room. You don't conquer it, you soften it. But there's more to it than conversation. It's also about movement. Imagine a room as a tide, people flowing, shifting, forming small islands of dialogue. Most people either stand frozen on the shore, afraid to wade in, or they rush from group to group, splashing noisily, trying to be seen. Neither works. The graceful ones, the ones who glide, move like dancers. They step gently between conversations, never barging in, never hovering too long. They enter a circle by invitation or by energy. A warm glance, a shared laugh, a moment of eye contact. Then they join naturally, saying something that blends with the flow rather than breaking it. A quiet comment, a nod of agreement, a small question that brings the focus outward again. And when the conversation begins to fade, they leave just as gracefully. A small thank you, a hand on the shoulder, a smile that says, "It was lovely talking to you." Then they drift, never escaping, never clinging, just moving gently onward. It's a rhythm, like music. The best conversationalists sense the beat of a room and move with it. Here's something else that helps: posture. When you stand in a crowd, stand tall but open. Don't clutch your drink like a shield. Let your arms rest easily by your sides. Keep your chest open, your eyes soft, your smile ready. Not fixed, but alive. Your body says what your words haven't yet. It tells people, "I'm approachable," and people, even strangers, will sense that. They'll find you easier to talk to. There's also the art of inclusion, one of the rarest social skills there is. When you're in a group and someone hovers nearby, bring them in. Say something simple like, "You'd probably know more about this. What do you think?" Or even, "We were just talking about topic. Join us." That single act changes everything. It transforms the room from a maze into a circle, because in every crowd there's someone who feels out of place, someone who's waiting for an opening. Be the one who opens it. You'll be remembered not for your charm, but for your kindness. Of course, there will always be people who dominate rooms, the loud voices, the attention seekers, the self-promoters. But even they soften when they feel genuinely respected. Let them shine if they need to. You don't lose light by allowing someone else to glow. Sometimes the best way to stand out in a crowd is to stand back, just far enough to let others breathe. When you speak, keep your voice steady, your tone warm, your laughter easy. Don't rush to prove your wit. Real charisma lives in comfort, not competition. And when you leave, whether it's a quick goodbye or the end of the evening, let it be graceful. A simple, heartfelt farewell travels far. It was lovely meeting you. I hope we talk again. Enjoy the rest of your night. These small courtesies echo louder than business cards, because long after people forget your words, they'll remember how you made the room feel when you were in it. They'll remember that you moved gently, that you listened fully, that you looked at them instead of through them. That's presence. That's influence. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about becoming the quiet center of calm. And when you learn to carry that calm with you, when you can step into any crowd, any room, any situation, and stay grounded, open, kind, you'll never feel like an outsider again. Because the truth is, the room doesn't decide who belongs. You do. Chapter 10. Talking to Tigers. How to handle strong personalities without losing yourself. Have you ever sat across from someone whose presence seemed to fill the room before they even spoke? Their voice, firm, measured, sometimes sharp. Their gaze, steady, unflinching, perhaps even a little intimidating. You feel yourself shrink just a little, choosing your words more carefully, your laugh softer, your thoughts second-guessed before they ever leave your lips. We call them strong personalities, but what they really are tigers. Tigers come in many forms. Some roar openly, others prowl quietly. They're the bosses who command a room without trying, the clients who always test your confidence, the friends who love fiercely but dominate conversations without realizing it. And when you face them, you have two choices: fight or flee. But there's a third way, the way of grace. Talking to tigers is not about overpowering them. You can't. Nor is it about surrendering to them. That only invites more dominance. It's about meeting their strength without losing your center. You see, tigers, beneath the roar, respect presence. They may not say it, but they feel it. The moment you tense up, apologize too quickly, or scramble to please them, they sense it. Not because they're cruel, but because they're tuned to strength. The energy of hesitation reads to them like weakness. But when you stay calm, when you hold your ground gently, something inside them shifts. They pause, they listen, because suddenly you're not prey, you're presence. I remember a story about a young manager named Aisha. She worked for a company led by a CEO known for his temper. Meetings with him felt like walking into a storm, fast, hot, unpredictable. Most people avoided him, agreed quickly, or stayed quiet. But Aisha did something different. She stayed still. She didn't argue. She didn't flatter. She listened, truly listened, while maintaining calm eye contact and an even tone. When he challenged her, she didn't rush to defend herself. She simply paused, then said, "I understand what you're saying. May I share my view?" Something about her calmness disarmed him. His voice softened, his body leaned back, his tone shifted. From that day, he treated her differently, not because she overpowered him, but because she met his energy without fear. That's the secret to talking to tigers. Calm is power. When someone comes at you with force, your instinct is to match it, to raise your voice, to speak faster, to assert your ground. But force meeting force only breeds fire. Grace is your shield. Stillness is your strength. People who dominate often do so out of habit, not malice. They're used to being the loudest, the smartest, the most decisive. They expect the world to move when they do. But even tigers pause when they meet someone who doesn't flinch. When you stay composed, when your breath stays slow, your voice steady, your expression thoughtful, you send a subtle message. I see your power, but I'm not afraid of it. That's respect without submission, and it changes everything. There's a technique I often teach. I call it the mirror of calm. When someone's energy rises, anger, intensity, pressure, you consciously lower yours. You breathe deeper. You speak slower. You let your tone drop half an octave. Within minutes, they start mirroring you back. Not because you force them to, but because emotional equilibrium is magnetic. Human beings subconsciously synchronize energy. Your calm invites theirs. It's not easy, of course, especially when their words sting, when their tone cuts. But that's where your real mastery begins. When someone lashes out, pause before you respond. Don't let the first wave of emotion sweep you away. Ask yourself, what are they really afraid of right now? Because behind every roar, there's fear. The fear of being wrong, the fear of losing control, the fear of not being respected. If you can see that, you stop reacting to the surface and start responding to the soul. You might say something as simple as, I hear your concern, or I can tell this is important to you. Those words aren't surrender, they're acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is what every tiger secretly craves. It's not submission, it's understanding. When people feel understood, they soften, even the fiercest ones. I remember a client once, a woman in her 50s, high-ranking, brilliant, but known for her impatience. She interrupted constantly, her feedback sharp as glass. One day, I asked her gently, do you ever get tired of being the strong one all the time? She went silent. Then she smiled, a little sadly. More than you know, she said. Even tigers get tired. Sometimes strength becomes armor, and all they're waiting for is someone calm enough, kind enough, to meet them without fear. So how do you hold your own when a tiger roars? You slow the moment down. You breathe. You remember that energy cannot dominate you unless you let it. You let them speak. You listen, not to the tone, but to the intention underneath it. And then, when you do speak, keep your voice grounded. Not loud, not defensive, grounded. Say what's true, say it once, then stop. Silence, used well, can be more powerful than any rebuttal. It makes people hear themselves. It restores balance. The goal isn't to win. It's to stay in harmony with yourself while staying connected to them. That's the paradox of power. It doesn't need to fight. It simply is. When you master this, you'll start to notice something subtle. Tigers begin to trust you. They'll bring their problems to you, their worries, their honesty, because they know you can hold their storm without judgment. That's when you've truly earned their respect. And if you ever find yourself tempted to mirror their aggression, stop. You don't have to prove your strength. The calmest person in the room is always the most powerful one, because calm is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. The tiger's roar may echo loudly, but your quiet steadiness can change its tone. So when you meet someone intense, commanding, difficult, don't shrink and don't fight. Stand tall in your silence, listen deeply, speak gently, and when they look at you, as they will, they'll see something in your eyes that very few people ever show them. Peace. That's how you talk to tigers. Not by taming them, but by reminding them, through your calm, that even they can rest. Chapter 11. Listening between the lines. Hearing what words don't say. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone spoke at length, their words perfectly chosen, their story neatly told, yet you felt something missing? A quiet tension beneath the sentences, a truth left unspoken. It's there, just under the surface, like the faint hum behind a melody. You can't quite name it, but you can feel it. That's where real communication begins. Listening. True listening isn't about catching words. It's about hearing what lives inside them. It's the art of tuning your awareness to the spaces between the sentences, the pauses, the hesitations, the tone shifts that whisper, "There's more here." Most people listen to reply. They listen for gaps in conversation where they can insert their next thought. But those who build deep connections, who move others, who are trusted, who seem to understand without needing explanation, they listen for emotion, not information. They listen between the lines. I once sat in a cafe and watched two people talk, a couple maybe. She spoke quickly, smiling, her hands animated. He nodded, smiled back, murmured small responses. On the surface, it looked like an easy conversation. But if you watched closely, if you listened closely, something different emerged. Her laughter came half a second too late. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. When he looked away, her face softened, not into ease, but into fatigue. She wasn't just talking about her day. She was asking to be noticed. And he, though kind, wasn't listening beyond her words. He heard the story, but missed the ache. We do this all the time. We think listening is about accuracy, remembering details, nodding at the right times. But true listening isn't about understanding the story. It's about understanding the soul. People rarely say exactly what they mean. When they say, "I'm fine," sometimes they mean, "I'm scared." When they say, "It's not a big deal," they might mean, "It hurt more than I want to admit." When they change the subject quickly, it's often because they've brushed too close to something raw. If you can learn to hear that, to gently, compassionately sense what isn't said, you'll connect with people in ways they'll never forget. There's a quiet magic in a listener who notices. Noticing is an act of love. When someone pauses before answering and you don't fill the silence, that's love. When their tone drops and you say softly, "You sound tired," that's love. When you notice what they're not saying and you give them space to say it when they're ready, that's love too, because listening is not a performance, it's presence. It's the willingness to be with another person, without fixing them, without rushing their story, without waiting for your turn. I once had a mentor who said, "When you truly listen, you become invisible, and in your invisibility, the other person finds themselves." That always stayed with me, because listening, real listening, is not about you at all. It's about creating a quiet enough space for the truth to unfold. When someone feels heard, really heard, something in them unclenches. Their shoulders drop, their breath deepens, the mask begins to fall away, and sometimes you'll hear the truth, not in their words, but in their sigh, in the way they say, "Anyway," in the way they linger at the end of a sentence, as if waiting for permission to go deeper. That's your cue. Not to pry, but to invite. You can ask softly, "What did you mean by that?" Or, "I noticed you paused there. Is something else on your mind?" Sometimes they'll open, sometimes they won't, but the simple fact that you noticed will plant a seed, the seed of safety, because people bloom where they feel safe. There's an old saying, when you listen to someone with your whole heart, you give them back to themselves. And that's true. Most of us spend our lives speaking into noise, interrupted, half-heard, brushed aside. To be listened to deeply is to be reminded that you exist. If you want to change the quality of your relationships, change the quality of your listening. When you listen, really listen, put everything else away. Not just your phone, but your thoughts, your plans, your silent judgments. Let your eyes rest on theirs. Let your breath match their pace. Let your silence tell them, I'm here. And if the moment feels heavy, don't rush to fill it. Sometimes silence says more than any sentence could. Silence gives permission. It gives space. It tells the other person, you don't have to rush. I'm not going anywhere. And when they finally do speak, don't analyze. Don't correct. Just witness. You can ask questions later, but for now, let their truth breathe. Listening between the lines is not only about others, it's also about yourself. How often do you listen to your own pauses, the moments your heart hesitates before saying yes, the slight heaviness you feel after certain conversations, the tiny ache when you say, I'm fine, but no, you're not? If you can listen deeply to yourself, you'll naturally begin to hear others more clearly, because empathy outward begins with empathy inward. And once you learn to listen that way, softly, fully, patiently, the world changes. Conversations slow down. Arguments dissolve before they begin. People around you start to open up without understanding why. It's because you've created a space they can rest in, and that, perhaps, is the highest form of communication, not to persuade or impress, but to offer peace. So the next time someone speaks to you, listen for more than words. Listen for emotion. Listen for rhythm. Listen for the small tremor in their voice that says, I just need someone to understand. And when you hear it, not with your ears but with your heart, pause. Let your silence say what words cannot. That's how you listen between the lines. That's how you hear the world beneath the noise. And that's how people begin to feel, not just heard, but held. Chapter 12. When Words Heal, the Power of Kind Communication. Have you ever been on the edge of breaking, one quiet sentence away from either falling apart or finding peace, and someone, perhaps without realizing it, said exactly what you needed to hear? Maybe it was simple. It's okay. Maybe it was gentle. You did your best. Or maybe it wasn't words at all, just a tone, a breath, a silence that wrapped itself around you like understanding. We rarely think of words as medicine, but they are. Used carelessly, they can bruise, cut, or linger like a scar that never quite fades. Used kindly, they can soothe, mend, and bring life back to the places in us that have gone quiet. Words heal when they carry three things: truth, gentleness, and timing. Truth, because empty comfort never lasts. Gentleness, because truth without softness is just another kind of wound. And timing, because even the right words, spoken too soon, can hurt. I once spoke to a man named Ravi who'd lost his job after 15 years with the same company. He was proud, deeply so, and when it happened, the blow went beyond finances. It struck his identity. Friends tried to help. You'll find something else, they said. Everything happens for a reason. He smiled, nodded, but their words slid off him like rain on glass. Then one evening, over tea, his teenage daughter said quietly, "Dad, I'm still proud of you." That was all. Just 7 words. But something in him broke open, not in pain, but in release. Because that one sentence didn't try to fix him. It simply acknowledged his worth, even in loss. That's the difference between comfort and healing. Comfort tries to make pain disappear. Healing honors it, sits beside it, and reminds you that it won't last forever. Kind communication is not about saying the perfect thing. It's about being the safe space where another person's truth can breathe. When someone is hurting, they don't need your solutions. They need your presence. They need words that say, "You're not alone in this." Sometimes those words are spoken. Sometimes they're felt. You can say, "I don't know what to say, but I'm here." You can say, "That sounds hard." You can say nothing and let your silence do the speaking. The silence that says, "You don't have to pretend with me." We live in a world that rushes to respond. Someone shares their pain, and we reach for advice. Someone admits a mistake, and we reach for judgment. But healing words don't rush. They rest. They stay soft. They trust the silence between sentences. I once read about a nurse who worked with terminally ill patients. She said, "I've learned that sometimes the most healing words are the ones we don't say." Instead of telling someone they'll be fine, she'd sit beside them and say, "Tell me what scares you the most." That's kindness in its purest form, not denying fear, but walking into it together. Kindness, when spoken through words, doesn't avoid truth. It illuminates it. If a friend is struggling, you don't have to cover their darkness with light. You can say, "This must be heavy. Let me hold some of it with you." That single phrase, "Let me hold some of it with you," can change a life, because it tells them they don't have to carry it alone. Words can also heal in the way they forgive. We hold on to so many things: resentments, misunderstandings, unspoken hurts. Sometimes the person we need to forgive isn't even someone else, it's ourselves. And forgiveness often begins with a single, quiet sentence. "I'm sorry. I forgive you." Or perhaps most powerfully, "It's time to let this go." But forgiveness doesn't always have to be declared aloud. Sometimes it's felt in the tone of our next conversation, the softness of our next reply, the warmth that returns to our voice when anger finally loosens its hold. I remember a woman once telling me, "He never apologized, but one day he spoke to me as if we had already forgiven each other." That, too, is healing. The beauty of language is that it carries energy. Every word you speak carries a vibration, sharp or soft, cold or warm, and people don't just hear your words, they absorb the energy behind them. When you speak with empathy, your tone wraps around others like a hand offered in darkness. When you speak with love, even correction can feel like care. And when you speak with awareness, with the intention to heal, not to win, people begin to trust your voice again. There's a rhythm to kind communication. It starts with listening, truly listening. Then it waits, because kindness never rushes. And finally, it responds, gently, truthfully, with care. You might think of it as a small ritual. Before speaking, breathe once and ask yourself, will what I'm about to say build or break? Will it leave them lighter or heavier? If you choose your words with that in mind, your conversations begin to change shape. Arguments turn into understanding. Misunderstandings dissolve before they harden. People feel safer around you, not because you agree with everything, but because your words never harm. In a world loud with opinions, gentle voices are the ones people remember. I think of words like water. They can erode or they can nourish. A kind word like rain may seem small, but it seeps deep, slowly changing the landscape of a heart. And sometimes the most healing word of all isn't even "I love you," it's "I understand." Those two words hold the essence of compassion. They don't demand, they don't correct, they simply meet. So if you wish to be someone whose words heal, remember this. You don't need eloquence. You don't need perfect timing or poetry. You only need to be honest, gentle and present. Your tone will do the rest, because long after your words fade, people remember how they felt when you spoke. And that feeling, if born of kindness, lingers like sunlight long after the day is gone. Speak softly, speak truth, and let your words be what they were always meant to be, not weapons, but wings. Chapter 13. The Social Alchemist. Turning encounters into opportunities. Every once in a while, you meet someone who seems to turn every meeting, every fleeting moment, every hello into something larger. An open door, a lasting friendship, an unexpected opportunity. You watch them move through life with a kind of quiet magnetism. They never appear to be trying to impress, and yet somehow things fall into place around them. They are what I like to call social alchemists. Just like alchemists of old who sought to turn base metals into gold, social alchemists transform ordinary interactions into meaningful connections. They understand something that most people miss. Opportunities don't happen by chance. They recreated in the spaces between people. And those spaces are built with presence, warmth, and the subtle art of giving more than you expect to receive. The foundation of social alchemy is curiosity, real curiosity, the kind that's unhurried, genuine, and free from agenda. When you meet someone, what if your first instinct wasn't, "What can I get from them?" but rather, "What can I learn from them?" That simple shift in perspective changes everything. People can feel when they're being approached as potential stepping stones rather than human beings. The air tightens, their energy closes. But when you approach them with authentic curiosity, when your eyes say, "You're interesting," instead of, "You're useful," they open up. And when people open up, they reveal the pathways where opportunity lives. I remember a story from a friend of mine, Maya, a film producer. She told me that one of the most important partnerships of her career began in a coffee shop line. She'd overheard a man mention he worked in sound design. Most people would have smiled politely and returned to scrolling their phones. Maya didn't. She turned, smiled, and said, "Sound design? That's one of those crafts people only notice when it's missing. How did you get into it?" That was it. A small, genuine question born of interest, not intention. He lit up. They talked for 10 minutes, laughing, sharing stories about creative work. Months later, that same man introduced her to a director who changed her career. Not because she networked, but because she connected. That's the difference between chasing opportunity and creating it. Social alchemists move through life as if every person they meet is carrying a small key, one that might open a door they never even knew existed. They don't rush to collect those keys. They hold conversations like lanterns, illuminating shared ground until, naturally, the right door appears. The energy you bring into every encounter matters more than anything you say. Think about the last time you spoke to someone who made you feel genuinely valued. They probably didn't flatter you or talk over you. They simply paid attention. They asked thoughtful questions. They remembered small details. They made space for your story. That's emotional generosity, the heart of social alchemy. When you give people the gift of feeling seen, they remember you. They might not remember your exact words, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And in that memory lies opportunity, not because they owe you something, but because gratitude naturally seeks expression. Life has a way of rewarding sincerity. But there's a subtle danger in misunderstanding this. True alchemy isn't manipulation. It's not about charming people into liking you or pretending to care to get ahead. Manipulation drains energy. Authenticity amplifies it. When your intentions are pure, when you approach someone with genuine warmth and respect, your energy expands. People can feel that. It's almost primal. Even across a crowded room, energy speaks louder than words. You can feel when someone's interest in you is sincere. Their eyes hold contact without pressing. Their posture leans in but not too close. Their tone carries warmth, not urgency. That's what people respond to. Social alchemists also understand timing, the delicate rhythm between reaching out and stepping back. Not every connection needs to bloom immediately. Some relationships are like seeds that rest quietly in the soil for months, even years, before they sprout. Others spark instantly, blazing bright like stars that were always meant to collide. The art lies in patience. You plant the seed, a kind word, a thoughtful message, a shared idea, and then you let it breathe. You water it occasionally with a simple, "How have you been?" or "I thought of you when I read this." You don't force it. You trust the rhythm of timing. Opportunity, after all, is a living thing. It grows best in warmth, not pressure. The most powerful connectors in the world, those who seem to know everyone, aren't driven by strategy. They're driven by genuine care. They don't chase numbers or name drop. They build relationships the way a gardener tends a garden, slowly, consistently, attentively. They know that the best opportunities often come disguised as simple conversations. A social alchemist walks into a room and asks, "Who here can I learn from? Who can I make feel lighter today?" That mindset shifts the energy immediately. You move from scarcity to abundance, from trying to take to wanting to give. And when you give first, the universe, in its quiet symmetry, tends to give back. I once heard an old businessman say, "The best deals of my life were never planned. They were born from people who trusted me." Trust, that's the gold every alchemist seeks. But trust isn't built on skill or speech. It's built on consistency, on showing up the same way every time, steady, kind, real. You can't fake steadiness. You have to live it. When people know what to expect from you, not perfection, but integrity, they begin to include you in their circles, their decisions, their future. That's how doors open quietly, almost without your asking. Social alchemy also means turning small moments into memorable ones. It's pausing before you leave a conversation to say, "It was really lovely meeting you. I'm glad we talked." It is sending a quick message a week later. "I enjoyed our conversation. I hope your presentation went well." Tiny gestures. But in a world starved for follow-through, they shine like gold. Because everyone remembers those who make them feel remembered. I've seen shy people become magnetic through this practice, not by changing who they are, but by mastering how to see others. When you notice the person standing alone, when you introduce two people who might enjoy knowing each other, when you ask one more question than required, you become the catalyst that turns ordinary social moments into extraordinary opportunities. And here's the truth. Opportunity rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with a spotlight or fanfare. It appears quietly, in the form of a name, a smile, a small conversation that could have easily been overlooked. But if you are awake enough to recognize it, to nurture it, it grows. Social alchemy, then, is not magic. It's mindfulness. It's remembering that every person you meet carries a world inside them. And if you enter that world gently, with curiosity and kindness, both of you will leave changed. Because people open doors for those who make them feel alive. So the next time you walk into a room, or start a conversation, or simply meet someone new, imagine yourself as an alchemist. Your words, your attention, your energy, they are your tools. Your sincerity is your fire. And the gold you create, it's not fame or fortune, it's connection. Connection that grows roots and branches, quietly transforming the shape of your life. That's the real power of a social alchemist. They don't chase opportunities. They become them. Chapter 14. The conversation that changes everything. The power of one honest moment. There's a moment in every life when words become more than sound. They become turning points. You don't always see it coming. It could be in a quiet kitchen, late at night. It could be across a conference table, in a hallway, in a car parked under streetlights. A pause. A breath. And then someone says something, or you do, that changes everything. One honest conversation can reroute the path of a life. It might be an apology long overdue, a confession finally spoken aloud, a truth trembling but determined, that's been waiting years for light. Or it might be something softer, a realization shared in passing, a moment of deep listening that shifts the ground between two people forever. The conversation that changes everything isn't always dramatic. Often it's quiet. It begins when two people decide, consciously or not, to stop hiding. When pretense falls away and honesty steps forward, the air feels different. The world sharpens. Every word begins to matter. I once spoke with a man named Julian, who had spent most of his adult life estranged from his father. Years of unspoken resentment had built a wall between them, pride, misunderstanding, distance. Then one evening, after a family gathering, Julian decided to stay behind. His father was sitting alone, the light from a single lamp falling across his hands. Julian said quietly, "I don't even remember what started it anymore. I just know I miss you." His father looked up, startled, and for a moment the silence felt unbearable. Then, without words, he reached across the table and took Julian's hand. That was it. No speeches, no apologies. Just a few brave words spoken from the heart, and years of coldness melted. That's the power of one honest moment. It doesn't fix everything at once, but it opens a door that's been locked for too long. We underestimate how desperately people want honesty, not the kind that cuts, but the kind that connects, the kind that says, "Here I am, no masks, no rehearsed lines, just me." Honesty isn't about bearing everything, it's about revealing what's real, and when you do, something miraculous happens. Truth calls to truth. The other person begins to drop their guard too. Two humans, stripped of performance, meeting soul to soul. You can feel it in the body. The shoulders soften, the voice lowers, the eyes stay still. Time slows down. That's when the real conversation begins. I once watched a leader address her team after a failed project. Everyone expected corporate language, blame, analysis, protocol. Instead, she stood before them and said, "I made decisions that didn't work. I should have listened more, and I'm sorry." The room fell silent, not out of shock, but respect. And then, something unexpected. Her team began to speak too. One by one, they admitted their own mistakes, their fears, their frustration. By the end of that meeting, what could have been a collapse became a rebirth. Honesty, when spoken with humility, heals. It restores faith in others and in ourselves. The conversation that changes everything doesn't need the perfect words. It only needs the courage to be sincere. So many relationships falter because people are waiting for the right moment to speak from the heart. But truth doesn't wait. It whispers. And if you don't answer, it fades. You may never get the timing perfect, but you can always get the intention right. It takes courage to say, "I was wrong." It takes tenderness to say, "I forgive you." It takes love to say, "I still care." And sometimes it takes immense strength to say nothing at all, to simply sit beside someone, letting your presence speak what words can't. Because sometimes the conversation that changes everything isn't about talking, it is about hearing what is finally being said. When someone opens their heart to you, don't rush to fill the silence. Let their words settle. Let your listening become their permission to keep going. The most transformative moments often unfold slowly, sentence by sentence, breath by breath. When you speak your truth, people may surprise you. The friend you feared losing may thank you for your honesty. The colleague you avoided may finally see you with respect. The partner you drifted from may take your hand again, softly, as if remembering what love used to feel like. Because truth, real truth, is magnetic. It draws people back into orbit. Even if the outcome isn't what you wanted, honesty leaves peace in its wake. It tells you that you showed up, that you said what needed to be said, that you honored yourself and the moment. And peace is a form of success that lasts longer than any approval. There's another kind of conversation too, the one you have with yourself. The one where you stop making excuses, where you stop waiting for permission, where you say, "It's time." That moment, that internal conversation, can change your entire trajectory. It might begin quietly, "I can't keep living this way," or gently, "I deserve more," or simply, "I forgive myself." And just like that, the world begins to rearrange itself around your truth. Because when you start speaking honestly, with yourself and with others, your life starts to align. Honest conversations are like earthquakes. They shake loose what no longer fits. They break patterns. They make space for something truer to emerge. And though it may feel frightening, it's also freeing, because beneath every unspoken truth lies the life you were meant to live. So maybe it's time to make that call, to write that message, to sit across from someone and finally say what's been sitting in your chest for too long. Not for closure, but for clarity. Not to fix the past, but to free the future. Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is a few brave words, spoken softly from a heart that's finally ready to tell the truth. Chapter 15. The Art of Connection, Living a Life That Speaks. If you listen closely, you'll hear it, that soft, unspoken rhythm that runs beneath everything we do. It hums in our words, in our pauses, in the way we look at one another. It's the rhythm of connection. Fragile, beautiful, eternal. We spend our lives learning how to talk, how to argue, how to sell, how to convince. But the real mastery, the kind that lights up a room, that heals, that moves, comes when we learn how to connect. And connection isn't something you perform, it's something you live. It's in the way you smile at a stranger without expecting anything back. It's in the way you listen, not to respond, but to understand. It's in the small, quiet choices you make every day to be kind when no one's watching. You see, all the techniques, all the little tricks you've learned, they matter. They'll make you sharper, smoother, more skillful, but without warmth, they're hollow. Words are only as powerful as the heart that carries them. I've spent years watching people, in boardrooms and bus stations, in airports and cafes, and the ones who truly connect, the ones who seem effortlessly magnetic, have one thing in common. They make others feel at ease. They don't try to impress. They don't chase validation. They don't measure their worth in reactions or applause. They simply arrive, fully, presently, genuinely. And that presence, that rare, grounding stillness, is what everyone hungers for. In a world filled with noise, the quietest person often has the loudest impact. Because they're not competing for attention, they're giving it. That's the secret most people miss. Attention is love in motion. When you give it fully, freely, without conditions, you transform people. And in doing so, you transform yourself. I once met an old teacher who said something I've never forgotten. He said, "The greatest compliment anyone can pay you is not to call you brilliant or talented or successful. It's to say, 'I feel calm when I'm with you.'" That's what we should strive for, not charisma that dazzles, but presence that soothes. Because connection isn't about standing out. It's about reaching in. And when you do it sincerely, people begin to trust you, not because of what you know, but because of who you are. Think of the most memorable people in your life. The friend who made you laugh until you cried. The mentor who saw something in you before you did. The stranger who offered a kind word when you were low. They all have one thing in common. They gave a piece of themselves, time, attention, warmth, and it changed you. We call these moments little, but they're not little at all. They're everything. Connection doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in the quiet. It happens in the way you remember someone's name, the way you pause before responding, the way you let your eyes hold gratitude for a beat longer than necessary. These are the invisible threads that weave a life of meaning, and that is the beauty of it. You don't need to be extraordinary to master connection. You just need to be human, fully, openly, and without fear of showing it. Because the truth is, every person you meet is carrying something unseen, a joy, a wound, a dream, a fear. And when you connect with them, even briefly, you become a part of that unseen story. Maybe you make it lighter. Maybe you make it brighter. Maybe your words, or your silence, become the reason someone believes in goodness again. That's the quiet power of human communication. You'll never fully know the impact you have. You'll never see all the ripples your kindness creates. But they're there, echoing through the lives you've touched, moving outward in ways you'll never measure. And that's enough. Because this, all of it, was never about mastering conversation for applause or advantage. It was about remembering that words are bridges, that we are meant to meet in the middle, to speak, to listen, to see, to be seen, to make the spaces between us smaller. If there's one truth I want you to carry beyond these pages, it's this. You already have what you need to connect deeply, the ability to care, to notice, to listen, to be present. You don't need to speak perfectly, you just need to mean it. You don't need to be confident, you just need to be kind. And when you do that, when you move through the world with that quiet combination of curiosity and compassion, you'll find that people start to open up around you like flowers to sunlight. Doors that once felt closed will ease open. Opportunities will find you, not because you chase them, but because you emanate something people want to be near: peace, authenticity, warmth. That's what it truly means to talk to anyone. Not to dominate conversations or impress strangers, but to remind them, and yourself, that connection is still sacred. And as you go forward, remember, you are always communicating. With your voice, your silence, your posture, your presence. Your life itself is speaking, even when you say nothing at all. So speak with kindness, listen with patience, move with grace. Let your words build bridges, not walls. Let your presence leave warmth in its wake. Because in the end, success, real success, isn't how many people you talk to or how many rooms you can command. It's how many hearts you've touched, how many moments you've softened, how many times your presence made the world feel just a little lighter. That's the art of connection. Not a skill, not a performance, but a way of being. And if you can live that, if you can walk through this noisy, hurried world and still make people feel seen, heard, understood, then you've already mastered the greatest conversation of all, the one that needs no words, the one that lives quietly, forever, in the spaces between souls. Conclusion: the quiet power of connection. Every word in this book, every idea, every story has been leading here, to this moment, to the stillness that follows understanding. You began this journey to learn how to talk to anyone, how to make people listen, how to stand out, how to connect. And now, at the end of it, maybe you've realized something deeper. That connection was never really about talking at all. It was always about seeing others, seeing yourself, seeing what lies quietly in the spaces between the two. The truth is, people don't remember most of what we say. They remember how we make them feel, the energy we bring, the calm we leave behind. If your words come from love, they'll echo. If your silence carries peace, it will speak louder than sound. The techniques you've learned, the first impressions, the small talk, the body language, the way you listen, the warmth in your voice, they're not tricks. They're instruments, and when you play them with sincerity, they become music. Because communication isn't a performance, it's a rhythm, one that lives inside every one of us. It's in the laughter that bridges strangers, in the pause before a truth is spoken, in the moment two eyes meet and silently say, "I see you." You don't need to be charismatic to connect. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You only need to be present. Presence is what people crave, in conversation, in friendship, in love, in leadership. It's what makes your words trustworthy and your silence meaningful. It's what makes others feel safe enough to show you who they are. And when that happens, when another soul feels at ease in your company, you've already succeeded. That's the quiet miracle of connection. Every skill in this book is really just one path toward that moment. The first hello that feels warm, the small talk that turns into laughter, the body language that says, "I'm here with you," the voice that soothes through distance, the calm that meets the tiger, the silence that listens between the lines, the honesty that heals, the presence that transforms chance meetings into something lasting. Every moment, every conversation, every human encounter is an opportunity, not just for success, but for meaning. The people who rise, the people who are remembered, the people who live lives full of warmth and respect. They are not always the smartest or the loudest. They're the ones who chose again and again to bring heart into every exchange. And that is the real art of talking to anyone. It isn't about words. It's about humanity. The world will keep rushing. Screens will keep flashing. Noise will keep rising. But you can be different. You can be the calm voice in the chaos. The listener who makes people feel seen. The presence that turns rooms gentle. Because every time you choose empathy over ego, kindness over cleverness, sincerity over show, you remind the world what connection is supposed to feel like. So as you close this book, take a moment to breathe. Remember that communication isn't something you do, it's something you become. And when you live it, when your life itself begins to speak with grace, patience, and warmth, you won't just know how to talk to anyone, you'll know how to reach them. And in that reaching, softly, humbly, one conversation at a time, you'll find not just success, but peace. Because in the end, the greatest conversation of all isn't the one you have with the world, it's the one you leave behind, in the hearts of those who heard you without you ever needing to say a word.